The coffee had a strange aroma, almost imperceptible. But after 61 years in this world, I've learned to trust my instincts. And my instincts were screaming at me that something was wrong in that precise moment. As my daughter-in-law Isabella handed me the white porcelain mug with that perfect smile that had always seemed too practiced too calculated. It was the most important day of my professional life. I was about to sign the documents that would officially transfer Vance Textiles, the company I had built from scratch over 35 years, to my son Daniel. But instead of feeling peace, I felt that something terrible was about to happen. And I was right. My name is Eleanor Vance. I'm 61 years old, and until 5 minutes ago, I thought I knew my family. I thought the woman my son had chosen to share his life with was genuine, sweet, the perfect daughter-in-law any mother could wish for. But when Rosa, our cleaning lady who had worked with me for 15 years, accidentally bumped into me, causing the coffee to spill slightly, and whispered with desperate urgency in my ear, "Don't drink it, Mrs. Vance. Please just trust me," my entire world began to tilt. My heart was pounding so hard I thought everyone in the boardroom could hear it. There we were, me at the head of the mahogany conference table that had witnessed thousands of business decisions. Daniel to my right in his impeccable gray suit, a look of pride mixed with anxiety on his face. Isabella beside him, her navy blue dress accentuating her clear eyes. The company attorney preparing the documents and 3 members of the board waiting to witness the historic transfer. And Rosa, my dear Rosa, with trembling hands cleaning the spilled coffee, her eyes silently pleading with me to listen. But before I continue, I want to invite you to do something special. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like. This helps me see that you support me and enjoy my stories. And comment below which city you're watching from. Now let's continue. I am not a woman who acts on impulse. I built my company by being meticulous, calculating, always 3 steps ahead of the competition. So in that moment, I made a decision that would change everything. I would trust Rosa. In a fraction of a second, as Isabella leaned down to help clean the spill with napkins feigning concern, I executed a move I'd practiced thousands of times in business meetings, the strategic distraction. "Oh, how clumsy of me," I said, loudly standing up abruptly and making my chair scream. "Rosa, don't worry about it. Just bring me another coffee, please. And Isabella, dear, could you grab those files from the credenza? I think I forgot the extra copies the attorney needs." Isabella rose with her usual grace, turning toward the credenza behind her. It was only 3 seconds. 3 seconds in which Rosa and I exchanged a look of absolute understanding. In a move that would seem accidental to any casual observer, I pushed my mug to where Isabella's had been and placed Isabella's mug in my spot. The mugs were identical part of the porcelain set I had bought for the company years ago. No one noticed the switch. "They're not there, Eleanor," Isabella said, returning with empty hands. "Are you sure you brought them?" "It must be my age," I replied, with a smile I hoped didn't look as tense as I felt. "Let's continue then. Daniel, son, are you ready for this moment?" My son, my only son, the boy I had raised alone after his father died of cancer when he was just 12, looked at me with those brown eyes that were exactly like his father's. There was love there, pride, maybe a little nervousness, but not a trace of suspicion. He didn't know what he was about to discover about the woman who slept beside him every night. "More than ready, Mom," he replied, taking Isabella's hand. "Thank you for trusting me, for believing I can continue your legacy." Isabella squeezed his hand and picked up her coffee, my coffee with the other. She took a small, almost delicate sip as the attorney began to read the terms of the transfer. I took the mug that had been hers and held it, not drinking, watching her. Watching her like a hawk watches its prey. The first 3 minutes were normal. The attorney read the legal clauses in that monotone voice all attorneys seem to have. The board members nodded occasionally. Daniel reviewed the documents page by page, and Isabella drank her coffee in small sips until the mug was almost empty. At minute 4, I noticed her hand was trembling slightly. I thought maybe it was my imagination, the result of my own adrenaline coursing through my veins. But then at minute 5, her face changed. The color drained from her cheeks as if someone had turned on a tap and let all the blood escape. Her eyes widened, not with surprise, but with absolute terror. "Isabella, are you okay?" Daniel asked, noticing the change. She opened her mouth to answer, but the only thing that came out was a choked, guttural sound. Then her hands went to her throat, clawing at it as if something inside were strangling her. She stood up so abruptly that her chair fell backward with a crash that echoed through the silent room. Isabella Daniel leaped toward her, but she was already falling. The convulsions began before her body hit the floor. It was horrifying to witness her back arching, her limbs shaking violently, foam starting to form at the corners of her mouth. The attorney yelled. The board members rose in shock. Rosa dropped the tray she had been holding, and the sound of metal hitting marble was like a gunshot. "Call 911, I shouted, though I knew it was too late to feign ignorance. Daniel was on the floor beside his wife, holding her, screaming her name over and over. And I was standing there holding the coffee mug she had prepared for me, the mug containing whatever was now destroying her body from the inside. And I realized with a terrible clarity that my daughter-in-law had tried to murder me. Daniel looked up at me, his eyes filled with tears, and something worse than sadness, accusation. "You gave her that coffee. What did you do to my wife?" "Daniel, I didn't." "You poisoned her," he screamed, his voice breaking. "Because you never accepted her, because you didn't want me to take over the company. Oh my God, Mom, what did you do?" The words hit me like physical blows. My son, my only son, was accusing me of attempted murder. And the worst part was, from his perspective, the whole scene seemed to confirm his theory. His mother had given his wife coffee, and now his wife was dying on the floor. The paramedics arrived 7 minutes later, though it felt like hours. They took Isabella away on a stretcher, still convulsing with Daniel following them, throwing looks of pure hatred back at me. The police arrived 3 minutes after that, and I was left in my boardroom surrounded by unsigned documents that should have marked my triumphant retirement, holding a cup of poisoned coffee and wondering how the hell my life had come to this. Rosa had disappeared, simply vanished in the chaos, and when I asked for her, no one seemed to know where she was. The police officers had me sit down. They read me my rights. They asked questions that I answered in a dazed state of shock. But as I spoke to them, as I watched them bag the coffee mug as evidence, as I heard the sirens fading in the distance, carrying my daughter-in-law to the hospital, a single question dominated my mind. Why had Isabella wanted to kill me, and more importantly, who else was involved in this? Because one thing I had learned in 35 years of running a company, no one ever acts completely alone. There's always someone else. There are always deeper secrets waiting to be discovered. And I was going to discover all of them. The interrogation room at the Central Precinct was exactly as I had imagined. Gray, personality-less walls, a metal table bolted to the floor, 2 uncomfortable chairs, and a blinking camera in the upper corner. I never thought I would end up here, not after a life dedicated to building something honorable, something to be proud of. But there I was at 61, being questioned like a common criminal. Detective Miller was a man in his mid-40s with premature gray at his temples and the tired look of someone who has seen too much human evil. He sat across from me with a manila folder and my coffee mug now in a clear evidence bag between us like a silent accusation. "Mrs. Vance," he began, his voice neutral, not revealing whether he believed me to be guilty or innocent. "I need you to tell me exactly what happened this morning from the beginning." "I already told the officers at the scene," I replied, keeping my voice steady though I was trembling inside. "My daughter-in-law brought me coffee. My employee Rosa warned me not to drink it. I switched the mugs. Isabella drank the coffee she herself had prepared for me, and 5 minutes later she started convulsing." "And where is this employee Rosa?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "Because no one at your company seems to know where she went after the incident." "I don't know," I admitted. "But detective, think about it. If I had wanted to poison my daughter-in-law, why would I do it in my own office, in front of witnesses, right before signing important documents? It makes no sense. Unless you wanted it to look like an accident," he suggested. "Or unless you acted on impulse. Crimes of passion are rarely logical, Mrs. Vance." "It wasn't a crime of passion because it wasn't my crime," I insisted, feeling frustration grow. "Have you analyzed the coffee? Do you know what was in it?" Miller consulted his notes. "Preliminary results show arsenic. A lethal dose. Your daughter-in-law is in the ICU fighting for her life. If she dies, this goes from attempted murder to homicide." The words hit me like a slap. Arsenic. Isabella had planned to poison me with arsenic, a classic poison that causes a horrific, painful death. Who was this woman who had entered our lives 3 years ago? "I need you to understand something, detective," I said, leaning forward. 3 years ago, when Daniel introduced me to Isabella, I thought he'd found the perfect woman. She was charming, educated, apparently from a good family. She said her parents had died in a car accident when she was 20, that she had studied business administration, that she wanted to build an honest life. It was all perfect. Too perfect, I see now. "Are you saying you were suspicious of her?" Miller asked. "No, not really. But there were little things, inconsistencies in her stories, moments when I'd catch her looking at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. And 6 months ago, when I announced I was ready to retire and pass the company to Daniel, her interest in the financial aspects became intense." Miller was taking notes. "Intense how?" She started asking questions about my personal assets, about whether I had an updated will, about whether Daniel would inherit everything, or if there were other beneficiaries. At the time, I thought it was natural curiosity planning for their future. Now I understand she was assessing exactly what she would gain from my death. The detective closed his notebook and looked me straight in the eye. Mrs. Vance, I'm going to be honest with you. The circumstantial evidence does not look good for you. Your son is outside screaming that you tried to kill his wife. The witnesses saw you handling the coffee mugs. And the one employee who can supposedly corroborate your story has conveniently disappeared. Then find her, I said with urgency. Rosa Gonzalez has worked for me for 15 years. She lives in the Pilsen neighborhood with her son Mateo, who has leukemia. That's why she needs the job, why she needs the money. And that's why I suspect Isabella was able to manipulate or blackmail her into putting the poison in my coffee. That got his attention. You believe your employee was in on the murder plot. I believe Isabella forced her somehow, but Rosa had a change of heart at the last minute. That's why she warned me. That's why she risked everything to save me. Miller stood up. I'll send officers to look for her. In the meantime, Mrs. Vance, you can't leave the city. And depending on how your daughter-in-law's condition evolves, we may need to formally arrest you. I understand, I replied, though every part of me wanted to scream at the injustice of the situation. They let me go with the warning that I would be called back. I walked out of the precinct to find Daniel waiting in the parking lot, leaning against his car with his arms crossed. When he saw me, his face twisted into an expression of disgust and pain. Daniel, son, we need to talk. Don't call me son, he spat the words. A mother doesn't try to kill her son's wife. I didn't try to kill her. She tried to kill me, I said, stepping closer to him. Please just listen to me. Listen to you, he laughed bitterly. Listen to more lies. The doctors say if Isabella survives, she could have permanent brain damage, organ failure, a ruined life. And you want me to listen to you. The mug was for me, Daniel, Rosa warned me. I only switched them to save my own life. Isabella prepared that poisoned coffee for me. Rosa, he repeated with contempt. An employee who conveniently disappeared. How convenient, Mom. How incredibly convenient that the only witness who could support your crazy story just vanished into thin air. It's not a crazy story, it's the truth. Son, think about it rationally. Why would I want to kill Isabella right when I was about to retire and give you the company? What would I gain? Because you never wanted to retire, he shouted, and people in the parking lot turned to look at us. Because you can't stand to let go of control. Because you saw Isabella as a threat, as someone who would pull me away from you and your precious company. That's not true. No. Then explain why you were always so cold to her. Why you never fully accepted her as part of the family. Why every time she made a suggestion about the business you shut her down. His words hurt because they contained a kernel of truth. I had been cautious with Isabella, but not for the reasons Daniel thought. I had been cautious because my gut, the same instinct that helped me build an empire, told me something was off. If you won't believe me, at least investigate your wife, I pleaded. Look into her past. Check her credentials. Talk to her supposed family. Just investigate before you condemn me. I already did, Daniel said, and there was something triumphant in his voice. When we started dating, I checked everything. Her college degrees, her work history, her family, it was all legitimate. What if she faked all of it? What if the Isabella you know isn't who she says she is? Listen to yourself. He shook his head. You sound paranoid. You sound like someone who would do anything to avoid the consequences of their actions. He stepped close to me, his eyes shining with tears. If Isabella dies, Mom, I swear I will make sure you spend the rest of your life in prison. And if she survives, I will never forgive you for what you did to her. He left before I could answer, leaving me in the parking lot with a broken heart and a burning determination in my chest. My son, my only son, hated me. He believed me capable of murder, and there was nothing I could say to convince him of the truth. But I wasn't going to give up. Not after surviving my husband's death, years of fighting in a male-dominated industry, every obstacle life had thrown my way. If Daniel wouldn't investigate Isabella, I would do it myself. I pulled out my phone and called Jack Riley, a private investigator I had used in the past to vet potential business partners. He answered on the second ring. Jack, it's Eleanor Vance. I need you to investigate someone. And I need it done discreetly and fast. Mrs. Vance, I saw the news. Are you all right? No. But I'll be better once I find out who my daughter-in-law really is. Her name is Isabella Reed. At least that's the name she gave us. I need you to check everything. Her education, her work history, her family, her life before she met my son. Everything. I'll get right on it. How deep do you want me to dig? As deep as you have to. If she has secrets, I want all of them. After hanging up, I drove home. The house that had been mine and my husband's, the house where I had raised Daniel, the house that now felt empty and cold. I went inside and poured myself a scotch, something I rarely did, but this was not a normal day. As I drank, my mind replayed the last 3 years. The first meetings with Isabella, her instant charm, how she had captivated Daniel. The marriage proposal after only 6 months of dating. The small, intimate wedding, because Isabella said she had no close family to invite. The 2 years of marriage, where she had slowly integrated herself more and more into the financial aspects of the company. And then 6 months ago, my retirement announcement. Was that when Isabella decided she needed to accelerate her plans? Was that when she started planning my murder? My phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated for a moment before answering. Mrs. Vance. The voice was barely a whisper. It's Rosa. Rosa, where are you? The police are looking for you. They need your testimony. I know, that's why I called. But ma'am, I can't go to the police. I'm still undocumented. If they find me, they'll deport me. And my son needs his treatment. Rosa, you saved my life. I will protect you. I promise. You can't promise that. No one can. She paused, and I heard the sound of traffic in the background. But I can tell you what I know. What Mrs. Isabella did to me. Tell me everything. And for the next 20 minutes, Rosa told me a story that chilled my blood and confirmed my worst suspicions about the woman my son loved. Rosa spoke in a trembling voice, occasionally interrupted by sobs that revealed the trauma of what she had lived through. Every word she spoke painted a darker portrait of Isabella, and I listened with growing horror, taking notes frantically. It was 3 weeks ago, Mrs. Vance Rosa began. Mrs. Isabella asked me to stay late one Friday. She said she needed help organizing some files in the study of their house. I thought it was strange because she'd never asked me to work at her home, but I needed the extra money for Mateo's treatment, so I agreed. And what happened, I asked, though. A part of me didn't want to know the answer. When I got there, she was different. Colder. She poured me wine, insisted I drink with her. I didn't want to, but she kept insisting, saying we were friends, that we could relax. After 2 glasses, she started talking about you. About me? Yes. She said you were an obstacle. That as long as you were alive, she and Mr. Daniel would never have real control of the company. She said you were manipulative, controlling, that you were ruining their marriage. I tried to defend you, ma'am. I told her you had always been good to me, but she got angry. My hand tightened on the phone. What did she do? She showed me photographs of Mateo. At the hospital, at school, playing in the park. Photos that only someone who had been following him could have. And then she said... Rosa's voice broke. She said if I didn't help her, she would make sure I lost my job, that I was deported, and that Mateo would be left alone without a mother and without his medical treatment. I closed my eyes, feeling nauseous. She blackmailed you. Yes. She told me exactly what to do. That on Monday morning she would prepare coffee in the office, that I was to make sure you drank it. That it was just to make you feel sick, to postpone the signing and give her time to I don't know what. That's what she said. But I knew she was lying. I saw something in her eyes, ma'am. Did she give you the poison? She gave me a small glass vial. She said to put it in the coffee just before I brought it to you. $50,000. That's what she offered me. Enough for Mateo's next round of chemo. But Mrs. Vance Rosa began to weep openly. I couldn't do it. You've been good to me for 15 years. You helped me when Mateo got sick. You gave me advances on my salary. You never treated me like a maid. You treated me like a person. That's why you warned me, I said softly, feeling my own tears threatening to spill. I was going to throw the vial away and tell Mrs. Isabella that I'd done it, but that you hadn't drunk the coffee. But then she showed up at the office that morning so early and made the coffee herself. I realized she didn't trust me, that she was going to do it no matter what I did. So I had to warn you at the last moment when I saw her handing you the mug. Rosa, you did the right thing. You saved my life. But now I'm on the run. I can't go home. If Mrs. Isabella survives, she'll come after me. And if she doesn't, the police will blame me too. Listen to me, I said with all the firmness I could muster. I am going to protect you. I will hire the best immigration lawyer. I will pay for Mateo's treatment. But I need you to help me. Did you keep the vial Isabella gave you? There was a pause. Yes. I hid it in my house under Mateo's mattress. I was afraid to throw it away in case she asked for it. That is crucial evidence, Rosa. It will prove Isabella planned this. Can you get it and take it somewhere safe? I can try. But ma'am, there's something else you should know. What? That night, when Mrs. Isabella was threatening me, she took a phone call. She spoke in a low voice, but I managed to hear something. She said, "It's all arranged. By Monday, she'll be out of the way. Then we can proceed with phase 2. Mrs. Vance, I don't know what that means, but it sounded like someone else was involved. A chill ran down my spine. Phase 2. What else had Isabella planned, and who was her accomplice? Rosa, I need you to go to a hotel. Use cash, no cards. Text me your location and I will take care of everything. And please get that vial. It's the proof we need." After hanging up with Rosa, I immediately called Jack Riley again. "Jack, there's more. I need you to investigate not only Isabella's past, but also her recent communications. Phone calls, texts, emails. She had an accomplice, someone who was helping her plan my murder. That will require some less orthodox contacts," Jack warned. "And it won't be cheap. I don't care about the cost. Just do it." That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed up in my study, surrounded by company documents, family photographs, replaying every interaction with Isabella, looking for signs I had missed. And I found them. So many signs. The time I found her going through my private desk and she claimed she was looking for a pen. The time she insisted on accompanying me to my appointment with the attorney to update my will. The way she always deflected the conversation when I asked about her family or her past. The convenient headaches she got whenever we planned an extended family gathering where more questions might be asked about her life before. At 3 a.m., I received a text from Jack. "Check your email. Found something." I opened my laptop with trembling hands. Jack had sent a scanned PDF. It was a death certificate. For Isabella Reed. The real Isabella Reed. She had died in a car crash in 2019, 2 years before my Isabella appeared in Daniel's life. The woman my son had married, the woman who had tried to poison me, had stolen a dead woman's identity. I called Jack immediately. "How did you get this?" "Contacts at the Bureau of Vital Records. The real Isabella Reed died at 26. No close family, no deep investigation into her death. The perfect kind of identity to steal. Someone with a clean past, but no one to contradict the details. So, who is she really? Still working on that. But Mrs. Vance, there's more. I found 2 cases of men who died under suspicious circumstances after marrying women, matching your daughter-in-law's description. One in Dallas 5 years ago, another in Scottsdale 3 years ago. Both were only sons of wealthy widowed mothers. The room started to spin. Tell me you're joking. I'm not. And in both cases, the mothers also died within a year of their sons' deaths. Seemingly natural causes heart failure, stroke. But the pattern is too consistent to be a coincidence. I need the names. I need everything you have on those cases. I'll send them over in an hour. But Mrs. Vance, you need to be careful. If this woman has done this before and gotten away with it, she's dangerous. Very dangerous. And sophisticated. After I hung up, I stared at my laptop screen at the photograph of the real Isabella Reed, a smiling young woman with her whole life ahead of her staring back at me from the death certificate. My daughter-in-law had stolen not just her identity but the chance for anyone to properly mourn or remember this young woman. At 7 a.m., Jack sent 2 more files. The first contained information on Sean Sheffield, 32, the only son of Teresa Sheffield, owner of a chain of pharmacies in Dallas. Sean died in 2020 of an apparent suicide by pill overdose. 6 months later, Teresa died of a heart attack. Sean's widow, a woman named Victoria Sanchez, inherited everything and vanished. The second file was about Michael Abbott, 29, the only son of Carmen Abbott, owner of several restaurants in Scottsdale. Michael died in 2021 when his car went off a cliff. 8 months later, Carmen died of a stroke. Michael's widow, a woman named Veronica Martinez, inherited the fortune and was never seen again. Victoria, Veronica, Isabella. My daughter-in-law was a serial killer. I printed everything and organized it into a folder. Then I drove to the hospital where Isabella was in the ICU. I needed to see Daniel. I needed to show him the truth. But when I arrived, I was met by 2 police officers stationed outside Isabella's room. "Sorry, Mrs. Vance," one of them said. "You have a restraining order against you. You can't come near the victim or her husband." Restraining order. Who filed it? Your son, Mr. Daniel Vance. He says you represent a danger to his wife. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. My own son had gotten a restraining order against me. I couldn't even talk to him to show him the evidence. Can I at least leave him a message? A letter. The officers exchanged glances. We can give it to him, but he has the right not to read it. I gave them the folder. Please just tell him this is information about his wife. Information that could save his life. Please. I didn't know if Daniel would read it. I didn't know if even if he did, he would believe me. But it was all I could do at that moment. I returned home feeling defeated, but as I pulled into my garage, I noticed something odd. The door to my study, the door I always kept locked, was slightly ajar. Someone had been in my house. I entered cautiously, my heart pounding. The study was a wreck. Drawers pulled open, papers everywhere, files overturned. Someone had been looking for something. And, when I saw my safe, the safe whose combination only I knew, standing open and empty, I knew exactly what they had been looking for. My will, my property deeds, the company titles, everything was gone. Isabella's accomplice, whoever he was, had been here. And now he had access to everything he needed to complete phase 2 of their plan. My phone rang. It was Jack. Mrs. Vance. I just found out who your daughter-in-law really is. Her real name is Valerie Ochoa, and there's an outstanding warrant for her arrest in Spain for fraud and conspiracy to commit murder. She faked her own death 7 years ago and has been operating under stolen identities ever since. Spain. How did she get to the US? That's the disturbing question. Someone with resources is helping her. Someone who can forge documents at an international level, who can help her establish new identities, who can make her disappear when things get hot. Her accomplice, I whispered. The one Rosa mentioned on the phone call. Exactly. And Mrs. Vance, if this accomplice has that level of sophistication, you are in grave danger. They should both be in prison. But instead, one is in the hospital, and the other is free, and now knows that you know too much. I looked around my ransacked study and realized the horrifying truth. The murder attempt this morning had been just the beginning. The war was just starting. And this time, I wasn't just fighting for my company. I was fighting for my son's life. I spent the next hour securing my house as best I could. I changed the locks, installed temporary security cameras I bought at a nearby electronics store, and called a private security firm to send a guard. I was not going to be an easy victim. While I worked, my phone rang. It was Rosa again. Mrs. Vance, I got the vial. I'm at the hotel you told me about. Room 302 at the Hotel Insurgentes. Perfect. I'm on my way right now. The Hotel Insurgentes was a modest establishment in a busy part of the city, the kind of place where one could go unnoticed among tourists and business travelers. I went up to the 3rd floor wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses, feeling ridiculous but cautious, and knocked on the door of room 302. Rosa opened it immediately. She looked terrible, eyes swollen from crying, face pale, hands trembling, but she greeted me with a desperate hug. Thank you for coming, ma'am. Thank you for not abandoning me. I would never abandon you, Rosa. Now show me the vial. She pulled it from her bag. A small, dark glass vial, unlabeled with a clear liquid inside. I held it carefully using a handkerchief so as not to leave fingerprints. This is crucial evidence. I'm going to take it straight to Detective Miller. With this plus your testimony, we can prove Isabella planned my murder. But ma'am, what will happen to me? I technically touched the poison. I was involved even if I didn't want to be. That's why we're going to need a good lawyer. And I've already hired one. I took a business card from my purse. This is Fernando Maldonado, one of the best criminal and immigration attorneys in the city. I've already explained your situation. He says you can argue coercion, that you were forced under threat. And regarding your immigration status, he's going to work on that too. Rosa took the card with trembling hands, tears streaming down her cheeks. I don't know how to thank you. You saved my life. This is the least I can do. I paused. Rosa, I need you to tell me everything you remember from that night with Isabella. Every detail, no matter how small. We sat on the hotel bed and Rosa began to remember, her voice gaining firmness as she spoke. When I got to her house, I noticed Mr. Daniel wasn't there. I asked about him and she said he was on a business trip, but there was something strange in how she said it, like she was pleased he wasn't there. What else did you notice about the house? It was very tidy, almost too tidy, as if no one really lived there. And there was a locked room. When I asked what was in there, Mrs. Isabella got tense and said it was just for storage. But I saw her face, ma'am. She got nervous. A locked room. My mind worked quickly. Where exactly? At the end of the 2nd floor hallway. A dark wood door with a new lock, one of those digital ones. I made a mental note. If Isabella had a secret room, it probably contained evidence of her previous crimes. Maybe even her true identity. Go on. What else happened that night? After she threatened me with the photos of Mateo, she gave me the vial. She said it was medicine to help you rest, permanently. Those were her exact words. And then she showed me something else. Rosa hesitated. She showed me a document. It looked like a will with your signature, ma'am. My blood ran cold. A will. With my signature. How is that possible? I don't know. But she said that when you died, that will would go into effect and Mr. Daniel would inherit everything immediately. She said she had made sure everything was in order. She forged my will, I whispered, feeling sick. Probably with her accomplice's help. That's why they broke into my study. They needed to compare the fake document with the real one, make sure it was perfect. There's something else, ma'am. That phone call I mentioned, the one about Phase 2. After she hung up Mrs. Isabella was very animated. She started talking to herself as if I wasn't there. She said something about, just a few more weeks, and then he'll be disposable too. She was referring to Daniel. Rosa nodded slowly. I think so. And ma'am, the way she said it? There was no love there. There was coldness, as if Mr. Daniel was just a means to an end. Of course. The pattern was clear now. Isabella or Valerie or whatever her name was murdered the mothers first inherited through the sons and then eliminated the sons as well. 2 murders, a complete fortune, and then she would disappear to find her next victim. Rosa that night. Did you see anyone else? Did anyone visit the house? Did you hear any other names? I didn't see anyone. But when I went to the bathroom, I noticed something. There were 2 toothbrushes in the guest bathroom, and in the kitchen there were 2 dirty coffee mugs as if she'd had a recent visitor. But she said she was alone. Her accomplice, I murmured. He probably left right before you arrived. Or maybe he was hiding in that locked room. I stood up and began pacing the small hotel room, my mind connecting pieces like a macabre puzzle. Rosa, I need you to do something for me. Tomorrow you are going to go with Mr. Maldonado. He will accompany you to the police to give your full testimony. You will give them the vial. You will tell them everything. It will be terrifying, but it's the only way to protect yourself and to protect Daniel. And if Mrs. Isabella wakes up, what if she sends someone after me? Isabella is in a coma in the ICU with guards at her door. She can't hurt you, and her accomplice doesn't know where you are. You're safe here. But even as I said the words, I felt a knot in my stomach. The accomplice, whoever he was, clearly had resources. He had broken into my house without a trace. He had helped Isabella establish false identities, forge documents, escape international justice. He was not someone to be underestimated. Mrs. Vance Rosa said softly, "There's one more thing I should tell you." That night before I left, Mrs. Isabella got another call. This time she talked for longer, and she mentioned a name. She said, "Don't worry, Arthur. Everything is going according to plan. By the end of the month, we'll be rich. Arthur." The name didn't ring a bell. Did you hear a last name? No. But from the way she talked to him, there was an intimacy there. Not just business partners. Something more. Arthur. I needed that name. I needed to find this man before he found me. After making sure Rosa had everything she needed, food, money, the lawyer's number, I left the hotel with the vial hidden in my purse. But before going to the police, I made one more call to Jack. I need you to search for a name. Arthur. Someone connected to Isabella or Valerie Ochoa. Possibly her romantic partner or criminal associate. That's like looking for a needle in a haystack. Do you have anything else? Think of someone with access to high-quality document forgery. Someone who can move between countries undetected. Someone with connections in both the criminal and legal worlds. That narrows it down a bit. Give me a few hours. I drove directly to the precinct where Detective Miller received me with surprise. "Mrs. Vance, what are you doing here? Your lawyer said you wouldn't speak without him present." "I'm not here to speak. I'm here to deliver evidence." I placed the vial on his desk. "This is the poison Isabella planned to use to kill me. My employee Rosa had it. She is coming in tomorrow with her lawyer to give her full testimony about how Isabella coerced her into murdering me." Miller examined the vial with narrowed eyes. "Where did this come from?" "From Isabella. She gave it to Rosa 3 weeks ago with specific instructions to put it in my coffee. Rosa got scared and kept it. It's physical evidence of premeditation. If this is true, it changes everything." He called a forensics technician to collect the vial. "Where is your employee now?" "In a safe place. She'll be here tomorrow with legal representation." "But detective, there's more." "Much more." I took out my phone and showed him the photos Jack had sent me. My daughter-in-law is not who she says she is. Her real name is Valerie Ochoa. She's a serial killer, wanted in Spain. She has killed at least 2 men and 2 women before using the same pattern. She marries the sons of wealthy mothers, kills the mother inherits, and then kills the son. Miller looked at the images, and I saw his expression shift from skepticism to alarm. Do you have evidence linking these women to your daughter-in-law? I have photos. Facial analysis done by a private investigator. And I can get more if you give me time. Detective, my son is in danger. Isabella planned to kill me first, but he was next. We need to protect him. If what you're saying is true, your son is under the protection of a restraining order he himself filed against you. Legally, I can't do anything without concrete evidence that puts him in imminent danger. And this isn't enough, I pointed at the photos. It's circumstantial. We need more. Witness statements, financial records, something concrete. Then give me access to Isabella's financial records. I bet there are strange transfers offshore accounts, something that shows the pattern. That requires a warrant. And to get a warrant, I need probable cause beyond the suspicions of a mother-in-law who is already a suspect in a poisoning case. Frustration burned in my chest. So what do you suggest I do? Wait until my son turns up dead in an accident. Miller sighed. Mrs. Vance, I understand your frustration, but I have to follow legal procedure. What I can do is expedite the analysis of the vial, interview your employee tomorrow, and if it all checks out, I can start building a case against your daughter-in-law. But that takes time. Time I don't have, I muttered. I left the precinct feeling powerless, but not defeated. If the police couldn't help me yet, I would have to take matters into my own hands. And I knew exactly where to start. That locked room in Daniel and Isabella's house. Whatever she was hiding in there could be the key to exposing her completely. Waiting until nightfall was torture. I spent the hours researching everything I could about digital locks, about how to enter a house undetected, about the exact placement of security cameras in the neighborhood where Daniel and Isabella lived. I felt like a criminal, but it was for a good cause, saving my son. At 11 p.m., dressed entirely in black, and feeling ridiculously like a thief from a movie, I drove toward Daniel's house. It was a modern residence in an exclusive area, with large yards and privacy between properties. I parked 2 blocks away and walked the rest of the way, keeping to the shadows. I knew Daniel would be at the hospital with Isabella. Since the incident, he practically lived there, keeping a vigil by the bedside of his poisoned wife. The irony pained me. My son protecting the woman who had tried to kill me, who was planning to kill him too. I had a key to the house. Daniel had given it to me a year ago for emergencies, but I didn't know if Isabella had changed the locks. To my relief, the key worked. I slipped inside, silently closing the door behind me. The house was dark and quiet. I turned on my phone's flashlight on its lowest setting and moved toward the stairs. Every creak of the hardwood floor sounded like a scream in the silence. My heart was beating so fast I thought it would give me away. This was the moment of truth. My son's life and my own freedom depended on what I found next. The fear was a physical thing, a cold knot in my stomach, but I pushed it down. I had to know. I reached the 2nd floor and found the door Rosa had described, dark wood, a gleaming digital lock. I pulled out a small device Jack had gotten for me. I didn't ask how that could supposedly hack basic digital locks. It took 3 tries and 5 agonizing minutes, but finally the light changed from red to green, and I heard the click of the deadbolt. I opened the door slowly and stepped into what could only be described as a serial killer's trophy room. The walls were covered in photographs, but not normal family pictures. They were surveillance photos. Pictures of Sean Sheffield with his mother Teresa taken from a distance. Photos of Michael Abbott with his mother Carmen clearly taken without their knowledge. And photos of Daniel and me. Hundreds of them, dating back to before Daniel even met Isabella. I approached the photos with trembling legs. There were images of me coming and going from my office, having lunch with business partners, shopping at the grocery store. She had been watching me for months, maybe years, before even approaching Daniel. This wasn't love. It was a hunt. On a desk in the center of the room were meticulously organized binders. I opened the first. Target 1 Sheffield family. It contained everything. Teresa Sheffield's financial records, Sean's daily routines, blueprints of their house, even copies of their wills. And at the back, newspaper clippings about their deaths and their obituaries. The second binder. Target 2 Abbott family. The same obsessive level of detail. Every aspect of their lives documented, studied, exploited. And the third binder, the largest one, Target 3 Vance family. There we were. My entire life dissected on paper. My routines, my properties, my bank accounts, my real will. Analysis of my relationship with Daniel. even notes on my perceived weaknesses. There was a section titled Approach Strategy that detailed exactly how she had planned to meet Daniel. It wasn't a coincidence. It was completely orchestrated. "The son is emotionally weak," read a note in Isabella's meticulous handwriting. "He craves maternal approval but also desires independence. I can exploit this duality. The mother is the primary obstacle, controlling, intelligent, suspicious. She will need to be eliminated first in a way that appears natural and that the son will not suspect." Tears streamed down my cheeks as I read. It had all been calculated. Every smile, every loving gesture toward Daniel, every moment of apparent marital bliss, it had all been a carefully choreographed performance. There was also a laptop on the desk. I opened it, and to my surprise, it wasn't password protected. Isabella had been arrogant, confident that no one would ever find this room. The desktop was full of digital folders with names like identities, forged documents, bank accounts, contacts. I pulled a USB drive from my pocket. I'd had the foresight to bring one and began copying everything. As the files transferred, I explored the room further. In a closet, I found packed suitcases, clothes, multiple passports, with Isabella's photo, but different names, and wads of cash in various currencies. She was prepared to flee at a moment's notice. She likely planned to disappear right after my death, and Daniel's eventual death. There was also a small safe in the closet. It was locked, but I found the key hidden inside a hollowed-out book on the shelf. Inside the box were expensive jewels, probably from her previous victims, and something that made my blood run cold. A vial identical to the one Rosa had given the police. Backup poison. And there were letters. Love letters, written in English, signed by Arthur. I read them with growing horror. They weren't just criminal partners. They were lovers. And according to the letters, Arthur was the mastermind behind it all. He had developed the system. He had taught Isabella or Valerie how to hunt, how to kill, how to disappear. My dearest V read one letter dated 6 months ago. "The heat in Spain got too intense. It was wise of you to fake your death and start fresh in the States. This target looks promising. The old woman is rich, the son is malleable. Following our tried and true protocol, you should be able to clear at least $50 million from this operation. Remember patience, charm, and never leave loose ends. Love A. $50 million. That's what my life was worth to them. That's what they planned to steal after murdering me. I photographed every letter, every document I couldn't copy digitally. My phone was filling up with evidence. Hard evidence that would prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that Isabella was a serial killer and that she had an accomplice named Arthur. But who was Arthur? The letters didn't include a last name, no return address. Yet there was something in the writing style, in certain turns of phrase, that felt vaguely familiar. I had seen it before somewhere. The computer finished copying the files. I closed everything carefully, making sure to leave the room exactly as I had found it. Isabella might be in a coma, but Arthur was still out there. If he realized someone had been here, he might run, or worse, come after me with more determination. I left the house as silently as I had entered and drove straight to Jack's place. It was past midnight, but this couldn't wait. Jack opened the door in his pajamas, a sleepy look on his face that transformed into alertness when he saw my expression. "Mrs. Vance, what happened?" I found everything I said walking into his apartment. Everything. Evidence of the previous murders, plans to kill me, plans to kill Daniel, and confirmation that she has an accomplice named Arthur. We spent the next 3 hours going over everything I had copied. Jack, with his investigator's expertise, organized the evidence in a way that would be admissible in court. He created a comprehensive report that connected all the dots, the false identities, the previous murders, the clear pattern, the intentions toward Daniel and me. "This is it," he said finally. "This is more than enough to arrest her for multiple murders and conspiracy and to issue a warrant for this Arthur, whoever he is." "But we still don't know who he is," I said in frustration. "The letters only use his first name. Let me see the letters again." Jack studied them carefully, using a magnifying glass to examine details. "Look at this. The paper is high quality, the kind law firms or notary offices use. And here on this letter there's a very faint impression as if something was written on another sheet on top of this one. I can try to bring it out." He used a forensic technique involving special light and angled photography. Gradually, ghost-like words appeared on the page, "Coleman and Associates Law Firm." "Coleman," I whispered. "That was Valerie's real last name, according to your research." "Family," maybe Jack suggested. "Brother, cousin, father. Someone with access to legal services that could facilitate document forgery. Can you search for every Arthur Coleman in the U.S. with legal connections?" Already on it. His fingers flew across the keyboard. Here's one. Arthur Coleman, 42. Attorney, specializing in international law and estate planning. He has offices in Chicago, Dallas, and Scottsdale, the same cities where the previous murders occurred. He brought his picture up on the screen and I felt a jolt of ice water. I knew that face. I had seen it before. I couldn't place exactly where, but I knew him. I need more information on him, I said urgently. Where he lives, who he works with, everything. Jack kept digging while I stared at the photo, forcing my brain to remember where I'd seen this man. A business meeting, a social event, and then it hit me like a lightning bolt. I had seen him in my office 3 weeks ago talking to Isabella in the hallway. She had introduced him as a legal consultant who was helping her with some personal matters. I hadn't thought anything of it at the time, but now, Arthur wasn't just Isabella's accomplice. He had been in my company. He had access to my offices, possibly my files. He had been sizing me up in person, likely looking for vulnerabilities. Jack, this man was in my company. Isabella introduced him as her lawyer. Then he knows exactly who you are, where you work, probably where you live. Mrs. Vance, you need police protection. Now. Not until I have everything ready. If I alert the police now, Arthur might get spooked and run. We need to catch him too. It's too risky. My entire life has been a risk since that woman entered it. One more day won't matter. Tomorrow, we deliver all this evidence to the police and the press simultaneously. We make it impossible for Arthur to escape. Jack didn't look convinced, but he nodded. We spent the night preparing multiple copies of all the evidence, ensuring that even if something happened to me, the truth would still come out. When I left his apartment at dawn, armed with evidence that would prove Rosa's innocence and Isabella's guilt, I felt for the first time in days like I was in control. I wasn't the victim in this story. I was the hunter. And I was about to close the trap. The sun was just starting to rise when I received a call from an unknown number. Normally I wouldn't answer, but after the night I'd had, my paranoia was at its peak. "Is this Eleanor Vance?" asked a female voice I didn't recognize. "Yes, who is this?" "My name is Catherine Abbott. I think we need to talk about Isabella Reed. Or more accurately about Veronica Martinez or Victoria Sanchez, or whoever the hell the woman who tried to kill you really is." My heart sped up. Catherine Abbott, the sister of Michael Abbott, one of Isabella's previous victims. "How did you get my number?" "I've been following your case in the news. I hired my own private investigator and he connected me with yours. A man named Jack Riley. He told me you were in danger, that the same woman who killed my brother is now after you and your son. We need to meet." 2 hours later, I was sitting in a discreet cafe with Catherine Abbott, a woman in her 50s with short black hair and eyes that had seen too much pain. Between us were 2 untouched cups of coffee, neither of us trusted drinks prepared by strangers now, and a thick folder Catherine had brought. "Thank you for coming," Catherine said. "I know this must be surreal for you, finding out your daughter-in-law is a killer, that it was all a lie." "How did you know?" I asked. "About your brother, I mean." Catherine sighed deeply. "Michael was my baby brother. I adored him. When he met Veronica, I thought he'd finally found happiness. Our mother had died of cancer 2 years earlier, and he was devastated. Veronica seemed to bring him joy again, but I was suspicious of her. Not at first, but there were inconsistencies. She said she was from Philadelphia, but she didn't know basic landmarks when we took her there. She said her parents were dead, but the dates changed every time she told the story. And she was obsessed with money, always asking about my mother's properties, about inheritances, about wills. "The same pattern," I murmured. "Exactly. And then Michael died. His car just went off the road on a cliff. The police said it was an accident, that he probably fell asleep at the wheel. But Michael was the most careful driver I knew. He never drove tired. And right before his death, he had told me he was worried that Veronica was pressuring him to update his will." "You suspected her then?" "Yes, but I had no proof. And then 8 months later, my mother died too. A stroke, the doctors said. But she was a healthy 63-year-old woman with no history of heart problems. I always thought Veronica had something to do with it, but again, no evidence. And Veronica inherited." Catherine nodded bitterly. "Everything. The restaurants, the properties, the bank accounts. And then she disappeared. Literally. One day she was there making funeral arrangements for my mother, and the next day she was gone. Left the country liquidated, everything vanished. Until she showed up here with a new identity I finished. As Isabella Reed marrying her next target. My investigator sent me the photos," Catherine said, opening her folder. "It's definitely her. Same face, same eyes, same calculating smile. Only now she's blonde instead of brunette. She pulled out photos of Veronica, and I pulled out photos of Isabella. Placed side by side, the resemblance was undeniable. Catherine, I need to know everything you can tell me about how she operated with your brother. Her routine, her methods, how she manipulated him. For the next hour, Catherine shared painful details. How Veronica had slowly isolated Michael from his friends and family, making him emotionally dependent on her. How she had sown doubts about Catherine, saying she was jealous, controlling that she wanted to sabotage their happiness. How she had convinced Michael to update his will to make her the sole beneficiary temporarily just until we have children. It was the same playbook Isabella had used on Daniel. The same gradual isolation, the same accusations against me, the same manipulation over the will. After Veronica disappeared, I hired private investigators, Catherine continued. I spent a fortune tracking her, and I found something. I found Victoria Sanchez, her previous identity in Dallas. Another family destroyed? Same pattern. A man named Sean Sheffield and his mother, Teresa. I know, I said. My investigator found that case too. Isabella, or whoever she is, has been doing this for years. It's not just her, Catherine said, leaning forward. She has a partner. A man. My investigator could never identify him, but there was evidence of bank transfers to an account in the name of A. Coleman. And in Michael's house after his death, I found one letter, just one that Veronica must have forgotten. It was signed by someone named Arthur. My breath caught. Arthur Coleman is her accomplice. Last night I found letters from him. He's a lawyer specializing in international law. He's the one who helps her forge documents, establish new identities, disappear when things get hot. Catherine went pale. You have evidence, real proof of his identity. Yes, and more. Last night I broke into my son's house and found a secret room. Isabella had documented everything. Her previous crimes, her plans to kill me, her plans to kill Daniel, and the letters from Arthur. I copied it all. Then we can get them, Catherine said, her voice trembling with restrained emotion. After 5 years of seeking justice for my brother, we can finally get them both. But we need to do this right, I warned. Arthur is smart. If he suspects we're close, he'll run. And Isabella, though she's in a coma now, will eventually wake up. We need to have everything in place before that happens. What do you propose? I have a meeting this afternoon with the detective in charge of the case and my lawyer. We are going to hand over all the evidence. The poison Rosa's testimony, the documents from the secret room, everything. And I want you to come. Your testimony as a family member of a previous victim, your own investigations will add weight to the case. I'll be there, Catherine promised. But Eleanor, there's something else you should know. When I was investigating Veronica, I discovered she didn't just work with Arthur. There were others. A whole network of people who help criminals disappear and start over, forgers, hackers, even some corrupt cops. If we go after them, we'll be stirring up a hornet's nest. So be it, I said with determination. They've ruined too many lives. It's time they paid. We spent another hour comparing notes, building a complete timeline of Isabella's crimes across her different identities. It was astonishing and terrifying to see the pattern so clearly. She was a systematic predator, choosing her victims with surgical precision. Always only sons of wealthy widowed mothers. Always emotionally vulnerable men looking for love. How does she find them? I asked. How does she identify the perfect victims? That's the question that has haunted me for years, Catherine admitted. My theory is that Arthur has access to legal databases. As a lawyer, he can look up wills, estates, family situations. He probably identifies potential targets, and then Isabella does the work of seduction. It's like a business operation, I said with disgust. Cold, calculated, efficient. Exactly. That's why they've been so successful. They don't act on passion or impulse. It's pure criminal logic. And that's why they're so dangerous. My phone rang. It was Jack. Mrs. Vance, we have a problem. Arthur Coleman just canceled all his appointments for the next week. His secretary says he had a family emergency and left the country this morning. Flight to Spain. Spain. My heart sank. He's running. Looks that way. I've already alerted Detective Miller. They're working on issuing an international arrest warrant, but that takes time. Time we don't have. If he gets to Spain, he could disappear for good. Is there anything else? Yes, Jack continued. Isabella woke up from the coma an hour ago. The news hit me like a punch. What? How is she? Stable, according to hospital reports. And she's already playing the victim. Told the police that you gave her the poisoned coffee, that you planned to kill her because you were jealous of her relationship with Daniel. Your son is with her now, completely convinced you tried to murder his wife. Of course he is, I said bitterly. She's an expert at manipulation. She's probably already convincing him to change his will to cut me out as a beneficiary to... And then I realized with horror that was likely exactly what she was doing. With Arthur on the run, Isabella needed to secure her access to the money quickly. And that meant accelerating her plans. Daniel is in danger, I said immediately. We need to go to the hospital. Now. Catherine and I ran to her car. She drove while I frantically called the hospital trying to get through to Daniel, but he wasn't answering. I called Detective Miller. Detective, you need to put police protection on Isabella immediately. Not to protect her from me, but to protect my son from her. She is a serial killer and my son is alone with her right now. Mrs. Vance, I understand you're under a lot of stress, but I can't assign protection based on unsubstantiated accusations. I have evidence, tons of it. I'll be at your office in 2 hours with everything. But please, for the love of God, send someone to the hospital now. My son could be in danger. I don't know if it was the desperation in my voice or if he was finally taking me seriously, but Miller agreed to send an officer to the hospital just to check on the situation. We arrived at the hospital 20 minutes later. Catherine accompanied me, both of us, running toward the ICU wing where Isabella was recovering. But when we got to her room, we found something that made my blood run cold. The room was empty. The bed was made. There was no patient, no nurses, no medical equipment. Where's Isabella Reed? I asked the nurse at the station frantically. She was discharged an hour ago. Her husband signed the papers and took her home to continue her recovery. Discharged. She was in a coma until this morning, and she's already been discharged. It was against medical advice. But she insisted. She signed a liability waiver. We couldn't legally stop her. I ran to the parking garage looking for Daniel's car, but it was gone. I called his phone repeatedly. Nothing. I called his house. Nothing. My son had disappeared with a serial killer, and I had no idea where they were. Catherine and I stood in the hospital parking lot trying to control the panic that threatened to paralyze us. Every second that passed was another second. Daniel was alone with Isabella, vulnerable, unaware that his wife was a predator who had killed before and would kill again. Think, Eleanor, Catherine said, grabbing my shoulders. Where would she take him? Do they have a second property? A place where she could isolate him? The house, I said suddenly. They have the house. But there's also, oh my God, the cabin. Daniel had mentioned a month ago that Isabella wanted to buy a cabin in the mountains. He said it was for weekend getaways to reconnect as a couple. At the time, I thought it was romantic. Now it sounds like a perfect secluded spot for a murder, Catherine finished grimly. I called Jack immediately. I need you to track any property purchased recently in Daniel's or Isabella's name, especially something in the mountains outside the city. Give me 10 minutes, he replied. Those 10 minutes felt like an eternity. Catherine told me more about her brother, about what he was like in life, about the dreams he'd had before. Veronica came in and destroyed everything. I saw my own future in her story. A mother mourning a dead son, knowing it could have been prevented, haunted by the what-ifs. Finally, Jack called back. Found something. There's a property bought 6 weeks ago in the name of a corporation called VNR Investments. The registered directors are Isabella Reed and Daniel Vance. It's a cabin in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, 2 hours from the city. Pretty isolated according to satellite photos. Send me the address. And Jack, call the police. Tell them where we're going. Tell them we need backup. I'm on it. But Eleanor, wait for the police to get there. Don't go in alone. If we wait, my son could be dead, I replied and hung up. Catherine and I got in her car and she sped onto the highway leading to Lake Geneva. She drove fast but with control, clearly a woman used to acting under pressure. During the drive, we went over our plan again and again. We knew it was dangerous. We knew Isabella might be armed. But we had no choice. Have you ever confronted someone violent? Catherine asked. Not physically. But I've negotiated with men who wanted to destroy my company, who threatened to ruin me. I've faced misogyny, sabotage, betrayal. This is different. But I'm not going to let fear stop me. Good, Catherine said. Because we'll need that strength. Isabella is manipulative, but when she's cornered, she's capable of violence. I saw it in Veronica's eyes right before she disappeared. When I confronted her about my suspicions, there was a moment I thought she would attack me. And then she just smiled as if I were an insignificant insect. We reached Lake Geneva as the sun was beginning to set. The cabin was at the end of a dirt road surrounded by dense trees. It was beautiful in an isolated, unsettling way. Daniel's car was parked outside. They're here, I whispered. We parked some distance away and approached on foot. Through the lit windows, I could see movement inside. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure it would give me away. "What do we do?" Catherine asked. "Just knock on the door." "No. First, let's see what's happening. We need to understand the situation before we act." We crept up to a side window. From there, we could see into the main living room. Daniel was sitting on the sofa with a glass of wine in his hand. Isabella was in front of him, still pale from her ordeal with the poison, but smiling, talking animatedly, gesturing expressively. I cracked the window open just enough to listen. "I know, love," Isabella was saying in a sweet voice. "I know it's hard to accept that your mother tried to kill me. But think about it rationally. She never accepted me. I was always a threat to her control over you, over the company. And when you announced you wanted more independence, that you wanted to make decisions without consulting her, she's my mother," Daniel replied, and his voice sounded tired, conflicted. "I've known her my whole life. I can't believe she's capable of—" "People are capable of terrible things when they feel they're losing power," Isabella interrupted. "And Eleanor has had power over you your whole life. Power over the company that should be yours. That's why we need to act now while she's distracted trying to clear her name." "Act how?" Isabella knelt in front of Daniel, taking his hands in hers. "Love, I've been thinking. With everything that happened with the trauma of the poisoning, I need to know that we're protected financially. If something happens to me, if your mother tries something again, I need to know that not everything is still in her name. We did the transfer papers for the company, but we didn't sign them, remember? The incident happened before the signing. Technically, your mother still owns everything. And now, with the accusations against her, it could take time to resolve this legally." She paused, stroking his cheek. "I need you to update your will, Daniel. I need to know that if something happens to you, I'll be protected." My stomach twisted. There it was. The real goal. She was moving faster than she had originally planned, accelerating, because her perfect plan had been derailed. "My will, Isabella. I'm not going to die. I'm young and healthy." "You thought I was too," she said softly. "And look what happened. Your mother poisoned me. What makes you think she won't come after you now, especially if she thinks I'm turning you against her? We need to be prepared, love. We need to protect each other." "I don't know. It seems rushed." "I brought the documents," Isabella said, standing and walking to a briefcase on the table. "Arthur prepared them for me, before all this happened. You just need to sign them. It's simple. If something happens to you, I inherit. If something happens to me, you inherit. Mutual protection. Isn't that what people who love each other do?" Arthur. Of course he had prepared the documents. Probably fraudulent documents that would give her access to everything while leaving Daniel vulnerable. "Where is Arthur now?" Daniel asked. "I thought he was coming to advise us personally. He had to leave the country for a family emergency." Isabella lied smoothly. "But he left everything in order. We just need to sign, and we'll get it notarized when we're back in the city." Daniel took the documents, reading them slowly. Even from a distance, I could see the confusion on his face, the doubt. My son was smart. He knew something wasn't right, but love and recent trauma were clouding his judgment. "This says that in the event of my death, all my assets pass to you immediately without probate review." "Isabella, that's not standard." "Because Arthur wanted to make sure there were no delays," she explained, a hint of impatience entering her voice. "Do you trust me or not, Daniel?" "Of course I trust you. Is it just that I'm not a good enough wife for you? That I need to almost die to prove my love? That I need—" Her voice broke in a calculated way. "I'm sorry. I'm being emotional. It's just— I almost died, Daniel. Your mother tried to kill me, and now you're questioning whether you trust me. It hurts. It hurts a lot." I watched as Daniel caved. I watched the manipulation work in real time. He went to Isabella, hugged her, whispered apologies, and took the pen she offered him. I couldn't stay silent for another second. I couldn't watch my son sign his own death warrant. I slammed my hand against the window, making them both jump. "Daniel, don't sign anything," I yelled. "It's a trap!" Isabella spun toward the window, and for a second I saw her real face. There was no sweetness there, no worried, loving wife. There was only cold, calculating, and absolute fury. "Eleanor." Daniel stood confused. "What are you doing here?" "I came to save you," I said, moving around to the front door. "Daniel, you have no idea who your wife really is." Before I could reach the door, it flew open violently. But it wasn't Daniel who appeared. It was Isabella, holding a large kitchen knife, her eyes glowing with something close to madness. "You shouldn't have come, Eleanor," she said in a dangerously quiet voice. You really shouldn't have come. Behind her, I could see Daniel approaching, utterly bewildered by what he was seeing. And behind me, I felt Catherine tense, preparing for what was to come. Isabella. Or Valerie. Or whatever your real name is, I said, keeping my voice steady, though my heart was racing. It's over. The police are on their way. They know everything. About Sean Sheffield, about Michael Abbott, about your real identity, about Arthur. Everything. Something shifted in her expression. Uncertainty, then a rapid calculation, then a smile that chilled me to the bone. If the police are coming, then I have nothing to lose, do I? She raised the knife. Daniel is a witness that you broke in, that you attacked me. It will be self-defense when I kill you. And then, well, then my dear husband will need more comfort than ever. And he'll sign anything I put in front of him. Isabella, what the hell are you doing? Daniel came out onto the porch, his eyes wide. Put the knife down, honey. She came to finish what she started, Isabella said, her eyes never leaving me. She tried to poison me. Now she's come to physically attack us. I have to protect us. I didn't poison you, I said firmly, looking straight at Daniel. You prepared that coffee to kill me, Rosa warned me. I just switched the mugs. You drank your own poison. And now you're trying to rush Daniel into signing documents that will give you access to all his money. Because that's your plan, Daniel. It was always the plan. Kill me, inherit through you, and then kill you too. She's crazy, Isabella said, but her voice was trembling slightly. Daniel, she's completely insane. Don't believe her. Then explain this, Catherine said, stepping forward, her phone held out, displaying photos. Explain why you look identical to Veronica Martinez, the woman who married my brother Michael 5 years ago. The woman who inherited everything after he and my mother mysteriously died. The woman who disappeared with millions. Daniel took the phone, staring at the pictures. I saw the slow, painful understanding dawn on his face. Isabella. Those are fakes, she said desperately. Photoshop, can't you see? They're manipulating you. The two of them are working together to tear us apart, to... Stop, Daniel yelled, and there were tears in his eyes. Oh God, just stop. Stop lying. Isabella took a step back, the knife still in her hand, her eyes darting between the three of us. She was calculating her options, looking for a way out. And a desperate woman with a knife was the most dangerous thing in the world. Daniel, I said softly, you need to get away from her. Now. But before he could move, we heard sirens in the distance. The police were getting closer. And Isabella knew it. What happened next was almost too fast to process. Isabella lunged not at me, but at Daniel. The knife raised. She was going to kill him. If she couldn't have his money, no one would. But Catherine was faster. She threw herself between them, and the knife that was aimed at Daniel's heart sank into her shoulder instead. She went down with a cry of pain. Daniel, acting on instinct, shoved Isabella with all his might. She stumbled backward, lost her footing, and fell down the porch steps. The sharp crack of her head against the stone was a horrifying sound. And then, silence. Just the approaching sirens and the ragged breathing of all of us. Isabella lay motionless at the bottom of the steps, blood pooling around her head. The next few minutes were a blur of paramedics, police, and flashing lights that turned the quiet cabin into a crime scene. Catherine was tended to first. The knife had gone through her shoulder, but miraculously, it hadn't hit an artery or bone. It would be painful, but she would recover. Isabella was also taken away on a stretcher, unconscious but alive with a severe head trauma that the paramedics said was critical. Daniel was sitting on the porch steps with his head in his hands, sobbing. I sat beside him, my arm around his shoulders, not knowing what to say. How do you comfort your son when he has just discovered his entire marriage was an elaborate lie crafted by a serial killer? Detective Miller arrived half an hour later, his expression grim, but with something that might have been respect in his eyes when he looked at me. Mrs. Vance, when you said you had evidence I wasn't expecting. This, he said, gesturing to the scene around us. My team found the secret room in your son's house, just as you described. And the analysis of the vial you delivered came back positive, for pure arsenic, enough to kill 3 people. So that means, it means you're completely exonerated. And it means your daughter-in-law is facing multiple charges of attempted murder, conspiracy, identity fraud, and possibly first-degree murder for the previous deaths you mentioned. If she survives her injuries. And Arthur Coleman, Miller frowned. That's more complicated. We issued an international warrant, but he landed in Spain 12 hours ago. The country has an extradition treaty with the U.S., but the process can take months. And he has good lawyers. He can't get away with this, I said fiercely. He helped murder people. He's as guilty as she is. And we will pursue him, Miller promised. But we will need your full cooperation. Yours, your employee Rosa's, Catherine Abbott's. We need solid testimonies, organized evidence, everything perfectly documented. You'll have all of it, I promised. Daniel finally looked up. His eyes were red and swollen with the look of someone whose entire reality had crumbled. "Mom," he said, his voice hoarse. "I'm so sorry. Oh God, I am so sorry. I accused you. I got a restraining order. I thought it was you and all along." I cut him off firmly, taking his face in my hands. "Don't you apologize. She was a professional, Daniel. It was her job to be convincing. She fooled men before you. Older, supposedly wiser men. It is not your fault that you believed in love. But I almost got you killed. And I didn't believe you. I wouldn't even listen. You were traumatized and manipulated. It's what she did best. But son, now I need you to be strong. I need you to testify about everything you saw, everything she said, everything she made you feel. Your testimony will be crucial in making sure she and Arthur pay for everything they've done." Daniel nodded, wiping away tears. "I will. I'll do whatever it takes." Over the next few weeks, our lives became an endless series of debriefings, sessions with lawyers, and media coverage. The story of the Chicago Black Widow exploded in every newspaper. Journalists camped outside my house, my office hounding Daniel wherever he went. Rosa came forward with her lawyer Fernando Maldonado and gave her full testimony. The DA agreed not to press charges against her in exchange for her full cooperation, and Maldonado worked to regularize her immigration status. I paid for the entirety of her son Mateo's operation and made sure they had financial support while everything was sorted out. Catherine recovered from her knife wound and became a constant presence in our lives. She and I formed a strange but powerful bond, united by our shared trauma and our determination to see justice served. Isabella remained in a coma for 2 weeks before waking up. When she did, she tried her usual tactic, playing the victim, claiming amnesia about the events, suggesting she had been coerced by Arthur. But the evidence was overwhelming. The documents from the secret room, the letters from Arthur Rose's testimony, the connections to the previous murders, it all painted an undeniable portrait of a calculating serial killer. Jack Riley continued digging and uncovered even more. Isabella, or Valerie Ochoa, as was her real name, came from a criminal family in Spain. Her father had been in prison for fraud. Her mother had disappeared years ago under suspicious circumstances. She had learned the trade young, and Arthur Coleman was a distant cousin who had become her partner and lover. The trial was set for 6 months later. In the meantime, we worked with the prosecutor to build the most solid case possible. I personally went over every document, every photograph, every piece of evidence, ensuring it was airtight. Daniel moved back in with me temporarily. He needed to heal both physically and emotionally. We would spend evenings talking, processing, sometimes just crying together. I told him about what his father had been like, about the real love we had shared, about how it's possible to trust again after betrayal. "How did you do it, Mom?" he asked one night. "After Dad died, how did you find the strength to keep going? To build the company? To raise me alone? To just continue?" "Because I had a purpose," I answered. "I had you. I had the company. I had goals to reach. And now you have a purpose too, son. You're going to testify. You're going to make sure Isabella and Arthur pay. And then you're going to live a life so full, so authentic, that it will make every one of their lies seem insignificant in comparison." 3 weeks before the trial, we got news from Spain. Arthur Coleman had been arrested trying to cross into France with forged documents. Spanish authorities had reopened several cold cases of missing persons who had connections to him. It seemed his criminal network was even more extensive than we had imagined. The day of Arthur's extradition to the U.S., I was there at the airport with Catherine, Daniel, and a group of other victims. Jack had managed to locate relatives of people who had disappeared or died suspiciously after interacting with Isabella or Arthur. There were a dozen of us, all united by grief, but also by resolve. When Arthur was escorted by the officers in handcuffs and shackles, our eyes met. I saw in his that he knew it was over. His network was exposed, his partner was in prison, and he would never be free again. "Any comment, Mr. Coleman?" a reporter shouted. Arthur stopped looking at all of us. For a moment I thought he'd refuse to speak, but then he smiled. A small, arrogant smile that chilled my blood. "It was a good run," he said simply. "How many people can say they lived 3 different lives before they turned 50? Valerie and I were artists in our field." "You were murderers!" Catherine yelled, tears of rage in her eyes. "You killed my brother." "Your brother was weak," Arthur replied coolly. "They all were. So desperate for love, they couldn't see the trap until it was too late. It's not our problem they chose to be blind." The officers pulled him away before he could say more, but his words resonated. He showed no remorse, no regret. To him, we had been just targets, not people. Business opportunities, not human lives. That night, back home, I found Daniel in my study looking at old photographs, pictures of him as a child of his father of our family before everything changed. "Do you think I'll ever be able to trust again?" he asked without looking at me. "Anyone, myself. Or did she break me permanently?" I sat beside him, putting my arm around his shoulders like I did when he was little and had nightmares. "She didn't break you, son. She hurt you, yes. She deceived you. But she didn't break you. Because you're here. You're fighting. You're helping make sure she can't hurt anyone else. That's not a broken man. That's a brave man." I don't feel brave. No one ever feels brave in the moment. Bravery is just continuing on even when every part of you wants to give up. And you are doing that. Every day you get up, every time you testify, every moment you choose to believe there will be better days, that's bravery. Daniel rested his head on my shoulder like he did as a child, and we stayed like that, mother and son, survivors of a storm that nearly destroyed us but had ultimately made us stronger. The trial was coming, and we were ready. The day of the trial dawned gray and rainy, as if the sky itself were weeping for all the lives destroyed by Isabella and Arthur. I arrived at the courthouse early, dressed in a dark blue suit my husband had always said made me look strong and commanding. I needed that strength today. The courtroom filled quickly. Journalists packed every available seat. The families of the other victims, Catherine Abbott, a cousin of Teresa Sheffield, and others Jack had found, sat together in a block of solidarity. Rosa was there with Mateo, who now looked healthy after his treatment. And Daniel was by my side, his jaw tight, his eyes fixed forward. Isabella was brought in, cuffed and shackled. She had lost weight in prison. Her blonde hair now showed dark roots, and the circles under her eyes revealed sleepless nights. But when her eyes swept the room and met mine, I saw the same cold calculation I had seen that night at the cabin. There was no regret there, only the fury of having been caught. Arthur was brought in next, wearing the same arrogant expression he'd had at the airport. They sat separately with their respective lawyers, but I could see their eyes occasionally seeking each other out. Even now, even facing life in prison, they were still partners. The prosecutor, a man named Perez, with 20 years of experience with violent criminals, began with an opening statement that laid out the pattern of crimes, the evidence, and described how Isabella and Arthur had operated as a predatory team for at least a decade. "What you will see in this trial," Perez said, looking directly at the jury, "is not a crime of passion. It is a calculated, systematic criminal enterprise. The defendants identified vulnerable targets, infiltrated their lives, and murdered them for money. And they did it again and again until finally, thanks to the courage of witnesses like Mrs. Eleanor Vance, their operation was exposed." Rosa was the first witness. In a trembling but firm voice, she told of the blackmail, the poison, the threats against her son. Then I testified, telling the whole story. Catherine testified on the third day, a model of composure. The fourth day was the hardest. Daniel testified. It cost him every word, but he was brutally honest. "I fell in love with an illusion," he said, his voice cracking. "The woman I knew never existed. It was an act designed to exploit me, and it was so convincing that even when my own mother tried to warn me, I didn't listen. That's the part I have to live with most, that I chose a murderer over my mother." The fifth day, Arthur took the stand against his lawyer's advice. His arrogance was his undoing. "What kind of business did you operate?" the prosecutor asked. "A business of opportunity," Arthur said with a smirk. "If some people were unfortunate in the process, well, that's regrettable, but no different from how big corporations operate every day." The jury heard his confession from his own mouth. Isabella followed, denying everything, claiming she was a victim. But the evidence was a mountain she couldn't climb. The jury returned after only 4 hours. In the matter of the state versus Valerie Ochoa, also known as Isabella Reed, on the charges of first-degree murder, Howe finds the jury guilty. On the charges of attempted murder against Eleanor Vance, Howe finds the jury guilty. Charge after charge. Guilty. 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 Then Arthur. Conspiracy to commit murder. Guilty. More charges, more guilty verdicts. When it was over, they had both been found guilty on all counts. They faced life in prison without the possibility of parole. I looked at Isabella. The mask had finally completely fallen. There was only the raw shock that she had lost. Arthur simply smiled, as if this were all an interesting game he'd lost, but didn't regret playing. I turned to Daniel and took his hand. He was crying, but there was relief in his tears. It was finally over. We could finally begin to heal. 3 months after the sentencing, I stood in the office that had been mine for 35 years, looking out the window at the city stretching out under a bright blue sky. It had been a long, painful journey, but we were finally on the other side. Isabella and Arthur had been transferred to separate maximum security prisons in different states, their criminal partnership severed for good. Rosa and Mateo had received their permanent residency papers. Mateo was in full remission. Catherine Fuentes had become a vocal advocate for victims of organized crime, starting a foundation in her brother's name. But my greatest concern was Daniel. He was in therapy, working through the trauma. Some days were better than others. I had offered him the company again, but he had gently refused. "Not yet, Mom," he'd said. "I need to find myself first." A knock on my door interrupted my thoughts. It was Daniel holding a box. "Found these in the attic," he said, coming in. "Photos of Dad. Thought maybe you'd want to see them." We sat together on my office sofa, looking through photos from decades ago. My husband, smiling at our wedding. Daniel as a baby in his arms. Family vacations before cancer stole those moments. They were painful memories, but beautiful ones. Real love, not the cheap imitation Isabella had offered. "Do you think I'll ever find that?" Daniel asked softly. "Real love, after all this." "You will," I answered with certainty. "But this time, you'll find it from a place of strength, not vulnerability. This time, you'll know what to look for. Your father and I fell in love young and innocent. You will fall in love wise and cautious. Different, but no less real." My phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. I opened it cautiously. It was from Isabella. From prison, she had found a way to send a message. It said only, "This isn't over. I have friends on the outside. Watch your back, Eleanor." I showed the message to Daniel. His face hardened. "We have to tell the police." "Yes," I replied. "But I'm not afraid, son. It's the last desperate gasp of a woman who's lost all her power." I forwarded the message to Detective Miller. "Will we always be like this?" Daniel asked, looking over our shoulders. "For a while, yes," I admitted. "But eventually, the days between the moments of fear will get longer. And one day you'll realize you've gone whole weeks without thinking of her." "That day will come, son. I promise." We hugged, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not a perfect peace, but peace in knowing we had survived, that the truth had won, that real, complicated, imperfect but honest love had prevailed over manipulation. That night alone in my house, I reflected on everything. I had started as a successful CEO on the verge of retirement, and had instead unmasked an international criminal network and saved my son's life. It wasn't the retirement I'd planned, but it was the story I was meant to live. As I was getting ready for bed, my phone vibrated one last time. Another message from an unknown number. I opened it, my heart pounding. "Mrs. Vance. I'm Arthur's sister. We have a lot to talk about regarding what really happened, and about what comes next." I stared at the message for a long moment. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to block it, to pretend it didn't exist. But another part, the part that had built an empire from scratch, that had faced down criminals and won, knew this wasn't over. Not completely. I took a deep breath, picked up my phone, and typed a reply, "Tell me when and where," because I had learned a crucial lesson these past few months. When life throws a battle at you, you don't hide. You prepare, and you win. And that's the story of Eleanor Vance, a woman who faced the unthinkable and emerged stronger. A story about deceit, survival, and the unbreakable power of a mother's love. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, if you felt every emotion along with Eleanor, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss more stories like this. Your support means everything to me. Like this video if you believe Eleanor was a true hero, if you admired her courage, her determination, her refusal to give up even when all seemed lost. And now, most importantly, comment below what city you're watching from. I love knowing I have listeners from all over the world. Also tell me, what would you have done in Eleanor's place? Would you have trusted Rosa? Would you have switched the mugs? Would you have broken into that house at night to search for evidence? Or would you have handled the situation differently? Your comments create a beautiful community where we share our thoughts and support each other. Thank you with all my heart for joining me on this emotional journey, for being there when Eleanor needed it, for believing in justice and the power of truth. See you in the next story. Until then, remember, never underestimate the power of a mother protecting her child.